The Wireless is Kelty's best-selling camping tent, so in this video, we're going to test its ease of setup, spaciousness, rain protection, comfort, and everything else about it to see if that's really true. The price of this tent comes in at about $190, so quite reasonably priced, and here's how it compares in terms of pricing to Kelty's other tents, and you'll see all these tents throughout the rest of this video as well. Now, out of the box, this is what I got: the setup instructions, 3 poles, the pole bag, 10 stakes, the stake bag, the overall carry bag, the tent body, and the rainfly, which comes with 4 pre-attached guidelines. To set up the Kelty Wireless, first grab the 2 longer gray poles, lay them both across the tent in an X, and then secure each end into what Kelty calls quick corner fabric sleeves. Then secure the 13 pole clips around these 2 poles. Next, grab the last ridge pole and secure each end into the grommets at the top of the tent, plus another 2 pole clips for this pole. This is the main tent body fully set up. After that, drape the rainfly over the tent by aligning the blue webbing on the rainfly to the blue webbing on the tent body. To secure the rainfly, connect the pole wraps on the underside of the rainfly to the poles, and then secure the 4 easy clip buckles at the bottom of each corner. Finally, stake down the 2 vestibules and guy out the 4 pre-attached guidelines. Altogether, the entire setup takes about 9.5 minutes. The takedown is just the opposite of the setup, and it took a little less time, about 8.5 minutes. For more details, I have a separate video with loads of instructions and tips to help you set up your tent more easily. Now, here's how the Wireless compares to Kelty's other tents. Typically, the more features a tent has, the longer it'll take to set up. The peak height in the Kelty Wireless comes in at about 58 inches. I'm only about 5'3", but even so, I couldn't stand up at the peak height, and my head hits the top of the tent. This tent has a 3-pole structure with 1 ridge pole running across the top of the tent. From the inside, this is the pole that actually helps to extend the peak height a little throughout the width of the tent, and this gives you a couple of vertical walls as well. I measured the heights at the ends of the ridge pole, and it came in at about 50.5 inches at the back of the tent and 49 inches at the front of the tent. Not as tall as the peak height though, and I had to crouch even more. Now, here's what the ridge pole looks like from the outside of the tent, along with the respective heights throughout the tent, and you can see how the peak height is kind of extended throughout the entire tent. Now, the Wireless is the only tent with 3 poles for the inner tent, making it the only tent here that has an extended peak height, so livability is pretty good. But if you want to be able to stand up in a 4-person tent, the Tall Boy is a much better pick with a much taller peak height than the rest. You won't be able to stand up in the rest of the tent here. You typically can't in a 4-person tent. For the base area, I measured the length, and that came in at about 95.5 inches. As for the width, that's about 86 inches, so the total base area is about 57 square feet. Now, what's the pad sizing like? This is what 2 double pads looks like inside the tent. One's my X-Bed Megamat Duo, and the other is a Climate Double V. I'll put the dimensions of these pads on screen. Basically, these pads are just the size of 2 regular pads put together. You have to sleep shoulder to shoulder, and there's not much leftover room around the pads. Just 5 inches on the lengths on either side, and 3 inches for the widths on either side. So when you're sleeping at the side, it can kind of feel a little bit claustrophobic when you do sit up. If you don't need to cram like 4 people in this tent, I think 2 people on 1 queen bed is a much more comfortable fit. And here's what it looks like in the middle of the tent. You do get quite a bit of leftover room for storing gear all around you. There's more than a foot of space on either side for the width and about 8 inches of space on either side for the length. As for livable space, the height of my pads were only about 4 inches, so plenty of headroom left, and my queen bed was about 9 inches, so still lots of headroom left. Here's how the Wireless compares to the other Kelty tents. This shows only the inner base area, and they're sort of all about the same, give or take about 4 square feet. So all of them had the exact same pad sizing, 4 regular pads or 1 queen bed. The Kelty Wireless comes with 2 vestibules, 1 at each length of the tent. Each vestibule has a width of about 40.5 inches. So on top of the base area from before, this gives us another 13-ish square feet for each vestibule. For both vestibules, that's about 26 square feet. If you really need to, you could set up a small backpacking chair like a Halinox chair and fit it into the vestibule. Although with the vestibule zipped up, the fit is really quite tight with my head grazing the top of the vestibule fabric, so it's not really meant to fit any like chairs or tables in there. Now, what features does each vestibule have? If you want to keep the vestibule partially open, there's a toggle in the middle for you to do so. If you don't need a vestibule, just unstake it and tie it up with another 2 toggles by the left. And to restake it, there's a single webbing loop that you can stake down and adjust if you need to. I checked the zippers on the vestibules. They're not branded. If you see 8K here, that's just the size of these zippers. These are meant to be large zippers, but you're not branded. There's only one zipper for each vestibule, and it's generally very snag-free. In terms of vestibules, the wireless comes in second to the Kelty Rumpus. You saw previously that the wireless vestibules cannot really fit much camping furniture, so if you want a much bigger vestibule, the Rumpus can fit not just chairs but even tables and mountain bikes. Underneath the 2 vestibules, we have the 2 doors of the tent. To keep the doors open, there's a single toggle by the left of each door. The doors are decently big. In the middle of the door, we have a length of about 4 feet. The longest length near the bottom comes in at about 5 feet, and the width is about 3.5 feet. It's big enough for 3 of me, but because the tent is not super tall, I still had to duck while getting in and out of the tent. Each door has 2 zippers, and these are the same big size, like 8K zippers. I found the unzipping to be generally snag-free, although the tent can use an extra stake loop under the door exactly right here, so that it's easier to get open without having to use both hands. But otherwise, for the zipping up, very snag-free and overall very nice 2-way zippers. For storage, this 4-person Kelty has 6 pockets. 4 of them are pretty small though, no bigger than the size of my hand. The other 2 pockets are much bigger and can fit even an entire camping fan if you need to. There are also 5 loops up top. All of these loops are felt loops. Now, here's how the Kelty Wireless compares to the other Kelty tents in terms of features. It's pretty good, coming up on top as one of the few tents with 2 doors and more pockets than your average tent. Now, we're going to move on to waterproofing features, and the first one is the rainfly. This is a full coverage rainfly, which extends almost all the way down to the ground. Apart from the vestibules at the lengths, you can't pull the widths away from the tent because there isn't an extra guy out point there. The rainfly is a bit too far off the ground. The next feature is the Kelty's seam taping. There is a seam running across the entire floor, fully taped. Also, there's no tub floor in this Kelty. The floor you see here actually has lots of seams. There are seams running down all the sides of the tent, and also all the corner seams, all of which have been taped. The taping goes all the way up to the top of the blue floor fabric and stops there. Everything else above isn't taped. As for the rainfly, every single seam was taped perfectly, and you can see the outline of the seam taping here. And the last feature for now are the rainfly vents. There are 2 of them, one on each side of the tent. Each vent is held open with a Velcro kickstand, and I really like that they face downwards instead of sideways for better rain protection. On top of that, I also really like that you can open and close each of these vents from the inside of the tent, but a minor con here is that the Velcro doesn't always align up properly. Now, let's see if they leak in the heavy rain. After an hour of this heavy rain, I stopped the test to check in on the tent, and here's what I found. To sum it up, there was not a single drop of leakage inside the tent at all. I checked the seams right at the bottom of the tent, I pressed down on them and they were still dry. I also checked the corner seams and they were completely dry too. I also checked the bottom of the tent, which wasn't covered by the rainfly, and found that it was dry too. Next, I checked the vent and found that it was completely dry. Then I checked the underside of the rainfly and found that it was also dry. The only part of the tent that leaked was the rainfly flap from the outside. You can see from the darker areas that these were leaks from the rain. Overall, here's the summary of everything I found. Basically, there weren't any major leaks at all, and the Kelty Wireless did great in the heavy rain. From what I can see, here's how the Wireless compares to the other Kelty tents. Everything is great except for the number of rainfly stakes. Right now, the rainfly of the Wireless can only be pulled away from the tent body at the vestibules. At the other two sides of the tent, there's no guy out point at all. So as you can see, the rainfly is up close to the tent body, which isn't great for ventilation. It's also not the best for rain because lots of water runs over the tent body, so a few hours of heavy rain might be the limit for this tent. If cheaper tents like the Kelty Discovery can be guyed out at all sides, I'm sure it's pretty easy to make the adjustments to the Wireless as well. If you take the rainfly off, this is how much mesh you'll find underneath. The entire top of the Wireless is covered in mesh, making it great for stargazing, but it's not the most amount of mesh compared to the other tents, and they're all apparently for 3-season summer use. As for materials, the flooring is 68 denier polyester, so is the rest of the tent body, and the rainfly is also 68D polyester. All these fabrics have a 1200mm waterproof coating. All the tent poles are made of fiberglass, but they're quite beefy for fiberglass poles, coming in at about 0.625 inches thick. The mesh is 40 denier no-seam mesh, and here's what it looks like compared to a small house spider. The guy lines are regular shot cord with an easy-to-use tensioner. The stakes are Kelty's own no-bendium super stakes, lightweight as well. And here's how the materials of all the different tents stack up against each other. Basically, they're exactly the same fabrics, waterproof rating, and pole materials. Some additional info: this tent meets flammability requirements, and it's made in China. For portability, the Wireless 4 has a pack size of 28.5 by 10.5 by about 8 inches. The total weight of everything comes in at about 13 pounds. If you're buying this tent, you're probably not too interested in portability, but here's how they stack up anyway. For pros, I really like the affordable price. For a pretty good quality tent at full price, this family tent comes in at less than $200. I also really like the 3-pole structure, which comes with 2 vertical walls and extended peak height, and this is the only Kelty tent that has that. There's also a decent amount of base area and vestibule space too, complete with not 1, but 2 vestibules. It's also quite feature-rich, one of the few 4-person tents with 2 doors, and also more than average storage options. And last but not least, it's great in the rain and survived the 1-hour heavy rain test, no problem at all. Now, if this video has been helpful so far, it would mean a lot if you could help me hit that like button. Thank you so much. As for cons, I was a little bit disappointed that this tent can't be guyed out at widths like most other Kelty tents can. I would also have liked there to be more mesh like the other Kelty tents, so the ventilation would have been better, and ideally the poles would also have been made of aluminum instead of fiberglass, but I guess this is a budget tent, so hence the fiberglass. But overall, I would say that there are relatively few cons to this tent, and I can see why it's one of Kelty's best-selling tents, because it is a great budget tent and I enjoyed my time in it. And you can't typically stand up in a 4-person tent, so I'd recommend the 6-person version instead. If you're still on the lookout for tents that are less than $200, I have the perfect video on screen here for you to check out. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in that one.